Hey everyone, Rarity Dash here, and it's time for another reaction request. If you have a video that you would like me to react to, check the description below. There's a link that'll take you to a Google document with all the relevant information. And this one I'm actually excited for. This request, it's a Wendigoon video. And I am definitely aware of Wendigoon. I'm a fan of his content. He's actually one of my favorite YouTubers that I've discovered within the past year, I would say. Because, I mean, it may surprise some of you, but I do watch more than just VTubers on YouTube. And Wendigoon, I found him last summer. I think I was really looking for content that I could just put on and just listen to while I gamed and stuff. So, and he has a lot of longer videos. I think I found him YouTube. I mean, the algorithm points you at all sorts of stuff. Eventually, it started one day I don't even remember where it started, but icebergs, the iceberg videos. One of those turned up in my feed one day. I clicked on it because it was a longer video. It sounded interesting. And because I watched that one, I started getting other ones. Eventually that led to Wendigoon's icebergs. And those were the best to me, I think. They stood out because he comes to each topic, I think, with the right attitude. Just a lot of empathy and a lot of just a good spirit towards it. He's not out to disprove anything or just to I don't know. He approaches it in the right spirit that I would like the topic to be approached, I feel. And because of that, I started watching more of his content, or I guess listening to it, because again, I was mostly looking at the longer videos, using them as background noise while I gamed. And eventually I subscribed, and I've seen a lot of his content. And even recently, I mean, this year he started the 2 podcasts with Moist Critical on one and then Meat Canyon on the other, which is kind of interesting because those are 2 creators that you guys introduced me to back when I did the reaction request streams. You guys would sometimes have me watch some of their videos. So interesting how that works. But yeah, I've seen a lot of his stuff, but luckily for the requester, this video today is one that I haven't seen. Because this is I guess I missed this one because it's kind of, well, it's from 2 years ago, so it's kind of a bit older, and it's also a shorter video, so probably not as good for the purpose that I typically use the Wendigoon videos. Yeah, the one that we're looking at today is the story of the 38-minute war, and I mean, that sounds interesting. I mean, if I had seen this video listed somewhere, I think I probably would have clicked it. So we're really fortunate that that I didn't, because this actually does sound interesting. I think I've heard of the 38-minute war. Wasn't this an answer in one of the Persona games, the shortest war? Which is probably weird that that's where I learned about something like a war. But I'm pretty sure that was one of the classroom questions, because it definitely does sound familiar from somewhere, and I think I remember that dialogue. Yeah, this is the shortest war in history, I guess. I don't really know what it's over, or who it was between, or anything like that. If I did learn that, I've forgotten it, but I'm definitely eager to hear the full story, and I know Wendigoon will be the right person to tell it, so let's go ahead and just get into it. Here we go.
War is a horrible, brutal tragedy that most often points brother against brother in a horrific conflict that leaves families and lives broken, and most often ends with the victor standing atop the ashes they created, hoping that more men will not come along and do the same tragedies that they committed. So now that I said that, I can make fun of it. A lot of people underestimate how many wars there's actually been in human history. The longest war of which being over 700 years, and several wars being over 100 years in themselves. However, even fewer people seem to know about the shortest official war that ever happened in human history, which was 38 minutes long. And since I'm doing this weird, sort of history teacher stuff, I figured who better to tell you about a weird, wacky thing that people certainly died in than me. Trust me, this is a real thing that happened. and it was hilarious. This war, known as the Anglo-Zanzibar War, is so wild because of how short it was, how stupid the fighting was to begin with,
England
and how
and Zanzibar,
gentlemanly the British acted during the whole ordeal. And while we're on the topic of gentlemen, what's one thing that every gentleman has in common? That's right, being disgusting. That was until today's sponsor came along, Manscaped. And while sometimes it can be cool to be gross and a barbarian and all of that, sometimes you want to be a bit more hygienic. See, I was scared initially because it advertises it as a safe razor technology, so I tried it out to trim my neck first of all, which, as you can see, even after a day, is still pretty thin. I was so impressed with this that I pulled the razor up to look in the mirror and accidentally cut out a bald spot in the side of my beard, and I wish I was kidding. So the razor works really well, a little too well if you're an idiot like I am. To be honest, I don't know what kind of hoodoo voodoo magic they put into it to make it work as well as it does. I just know that it works. Specifically, Manscaped sent me the Perfect Package 3.0, which included their lawnmower razor as well as some other goodies. As you can see, not only is the design sleek and cool, but it's also waterproof, has a handy light because, you know, that's necessary for some things. On top of that, the Perfect Package also includes toner and deodorant because, like, let's be honest, fellas, if you're going to put deodorant on your armpits, you want to put it other places. Not only that, but I'm able to hook you all up with a special deal. If you go to manscaped.com and use the promo code Wendigoon, you will not only get this package as well as others for 20% off of your first order with free international shipping, but you will also be receiving 2 gifts, one of which being this handy little carry bag, which is great, I've been using it, as well as a pair of boxers that are so well made, it feels like someone actually cared for once. So once again, if you're interested, use the promo code Wendigoon at the link in the description below to get access to 20% off your first order today and turn a very, very, very scary process into a hygiene standard that it should be. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you so much to Manscaped for sponsoring this video. It means the most to me, and you all are the best. And we are back to the video. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into it and go through all the details of what happened that day. But as always, thank you for watching. The Anglo-Zanzibar War occurred on August 27th of 1896. However, there's some background you need to know before we get into the actual events that happened in that half hour. See, Zanzibar Island, where this took place, is a rather small island off the coast of East Africa, which is today part of Tanzania. See, in the 1800s, there was this thing Britain really liked to do with lesser developed countries, where they, you know, just kind of like took them. And Zanzibar was
that was their thing
However,
back then,
instead of being like an actual colony that they had to pay into, it was more so kind of like Britain was there and provided like security stuff and then took their resources but didn't really have to give them anything and just kind of made sure they didn't get like too crazy. And without going into all the details, most of it just came down that Britain took resources from the people of Zanzibar and then told them some stuff that they could and couldn't do. Like in 1858, whenever Zanzibar declared its independence from the nation that previously controlled it, Britain was just kind of like, all right, that's cool. Get back to work. However, there wasn't really anything too intrusive that Britain was doing until in 1873 when they told the at the time leader, Bargash bin Said, that they had to get rid of slavery within the country. See, around the late 1800s, slavery was kind of dying out everywhere, and most industrialized nations were making a big push to stop it, and pretty much all of them were able to abolish slavery rather peacefully, unless you're the United States and you have to have a war over it. And this is something that the people of Zanzibar had a problem with, as it was one of their primary exports. It was around this time that Zanzibar had built their capital, known as Zanzibar Town. There were more smaller structures around it, however the primary structures of Zanzibar Town consisted of the palace, the harem, and something known as the House of Wonders that were all wooden structures connected to each other through bridges. While a palace and harem were pretty standard for African kingdoms in the 1800s, the House of Wonders was interesting as it was a place of worship that is supposedly the first building in East Africa to have electricity. And then in front of all that was a really big lighthouse. Much of the funding that Zanzibar received to do this type of stuff came from the British government. So whenever the British government said, hey, you got to get rid of slavery and we'll give you a ton of money, the government was fine with it. However, a lot of the people were not. It got even worse in the years following this, as a little country you may have heard of called Germany started to get into a trade fight with Britain and Zanzibar was one of the primary locations of that. See, Britain owned land around the area, and Germany owned land around the area, and they all wanted a piece of the money that trade routes were bringing in, so Zanzibar was kind of a battleground before it became a, actual battleground. It got really bad whenever the new ruler that came to power, Ali bin Said, in 1890, decided that he was going to be entirely pro-Britain. He put up rulings such as Britain was able to decide what Zanzibar could and couldn't trade, and Britain had veto power for whatever future ruler of Zanzibar would come along. People over time got really upset with Britain pretty much telling them what to do. So in 1893, whenever the new leader, Hamad bin Thuwani, was put into power and he was pretty much a British puppet, people got pretty upset. As a matter of fact, riots began occurring around Zanzibar, to which the British government then put 1,000 troops around him in the British palace. So there's a lot of tension happening in the country, a lot of tension happening around the palace area, and then this is when everything goes downhill. At 11:40 a.m. on August the 25th of 1896, Thuwani died unexpectedly. So this now meant that the throne was open. However, according to the ruling mentioned that was set up in 1890, Britain had to approve whoever the new ruler would be. That same day, as a matter of fact, a couple of hours later, a man walked into the palace named Khalid bin Bargash. This guy was the 29-year-old nephew of Thuwani, and some people suspect to this day that maybe he murdered his uncle in order to take control. Hence the whole he was already in the area and his uncle died unexpectedly thing.
Yeah, that does sound a little suspect.
Moved into the palace without the approval of the British government and said that he's now Sultan, which is pretty much like king, but like Britain's the real king, so you can't be king. You can be a sultan though, that works. Britain did not care for this one bit. As a matter of fact, they had a candidate put forward that they were just going to throw into power called Hamad bin Muhammad, who was just kind of standing there like, oh, well, I guess that guy's sultan now. I'll explain what these ships are in a second, but the moment that this happened, the British diplomat by the name of Basil Cove came onto the scene to try to reason with Khalid.
Basil Cove.
See, Khalid actually did the same thing 3 years ago after the previous ruler died. He had came and tried to take power, and the British government told him that's a really bad idea, I wouldn't be trying that, to which Khalid backed off. So now Basil Cove, a diplomat, comes again and tries to tell Khalid that this is still a bad idea and he still shouldn't do it. His precise words was Khalid needs to think carefully in this emotional time. What was not immediately apparent to the British government, but became immediately apparent, was that Khalid did not come alone. Instead, he brought about 2,800 soldiers with him. Now, several of these, around 700, were Zanzibar troops in the area who were sympathetic for his cause. You know, the whole we don't like Britain, let's get Britain out kind of thing. Which, again, the fact that he showed up with all of these people leads to the belief that he probably killed his uncle. And as
Darling Arna, when the ship crashed, I half wondered if life as we...
And as for what the other ones of the 2,800 were, mostly just locals who he gave guns and told to follow him, so, that's cool. And also, Khalid took control of the Zanzibar Navy, which consisted of one dinghy called the HMS Glasgow, which was a small yacht that was built for the Sultan of Zanzibar by Britain as a gift, which Khalid converted into a makeshift warboat by simply strapping a few cannons and a machine gun to the front of the yacht. Britain,
I'm beginning to see why this only lasted 38 minutes.
Technically, probably overthrew the Zanzibar government. Had on their side about 900 loyal Zanzibar soldiers, at least loyal to Britain, and about 150 British sailors. So, pretty much what happens in the beginning is Basil Cove keeps trying to tell Khalid to stop. As a matter of fact, Khalid's in the palace, so I'm going to put a K right here so we know where that dude's at. To which Khalid keeps making things worse. At 2:30 p.m. the same day, and remember, Thuwani died like 3 hours ago, Khalid holds a burial for Thuwani in the royal gardens, and then 30 minutes later, crowns himself as Sultan of Zanzibar. Khalid during this time kept doing things like he tried to message the United States in order to get the United States to come help by going, I'm Sultan and Britain's gonna shoot me. Oh no, help. To which the response from America is the Sultan is not recognized by Her Majesty's government, therefore we do not recognize you as a Sultan. Sorry. Which is pretty much the equivalent of the United States going, America can't come to the phone right now. Get wrecked. And the messages from Cove kept getting funnier. Like, it went from like, don't you go in that palace. Don't you crown yourself. And then he crowns himself, and they're like, don't keep that crown on. I also just realized that his name is Basil Cave, not Cove.
Oh, well.
I can't wait for the comments to find out about that one. And
I mean, it still sounds like a place
messages to the British were also equally as funny. Like, for example, he had all the flags on all the ships lowered to half-mast as respect for Thuwani, who had just died. But along with that same message, he goes, also remember, the new Sultan's not a real Sultan. He doesn't count. Don't listen to him. If he tries to tell you something, it's a trick. Close your ears. This thing went on all night, and by the next day, on the 26th of August at 10 a.m., the British Royal Navy that was there consisted of the Raccoon, the Thrush, and the Sparrow, which may sound like really cute names, but I want to remind you they looked like this. Also, to remind you through this entire thing, Zanzibar looked like this, and the British Empire looked like this.
Yeah.
Are you starting to see why it was a 38-minute war?
Yeah, I definitely am.
At around 2 p.m. that day, the Admiral arrived on the command ship, known as the St. George, and gave an ultimatum to Khalid. He said if Khalid was not out of the palace and his stupid fake Sultan flag taken down by 9 a.m. the next day, they would use these three to absolutely decimate all of this. The exact words used by the British government whenever the brigade asked what they can do to take Zanzibar back was, quote, take it back by whatever measures necessary. This didn't only give Khalid ample time in order to surrender, but it also allowed the British government to come along on the sides of the shores and begin evacuating the surrounding town. There were smaller boats around here conducting rescue operations like that, but these are the big four, so they're the only ones I have drawn because I'm not an artist, as you get it. Khalid was totally quiet until 8 a.m. the next day, and remember, his deadline is 9 a.m. when he requested a parley directly to Cave. Cave said the only way that he was getting a parley or anything of the sort was to step down. At 8:30 a.m., again we're getting close, Khalid sends a message to the British Navy saying he does not believe that they will fire on them, to which the exact words that Cave said back were, we certainly will. That's what I mean by this is so hilariously gentlemanly. Like, the British Navy has their flags at half-mast for the country they're about to bombard, and when they're just talking back and forth like pin pounds, like, you won't shoot me, I certainly will, if you make me, we're going to kill you. So sure enough, as pretty much everyone expected, 9 a.m. rolled around, the flag was still up, and Khalid was still in the palace. To which, at precisely 9 a.m., the Admiral gave the order to fire. To which, at precisely 9:02 a.m., the Raccoon, Thrush, and Sparrow all simultaneously began firing on the capital. What followed was 38 minutes of noise. See, here in the capital of Zanzibar, they had a few cannons and a couple machine guns, but I'm once again stressing these things look like this. So what pretty much happened is, like, they probably saw the first few shots, and then it was just 38 minutes of explosions. The reason this war is cited as 38 minutes is because it's often considered a war can begin whenever the first shots are fired. Like, for example, in the American Revolution, they say the shots at Lexington and Concord signified the opening of the revolution. And then it's also believed by several whenever the flag at the enemy's capital is taken down, that is the end of the war. So, for example, people say that World War II ended whenever Russia got to Germany and took down the flag from the Reichstag. So what happened is at 9:02 a.m. they started shooting, and at 9:40 a.m. they quit shooting, and then the flag was gone, as was the palace and everything else. And they're like, all right, boys, war's over. Reports vary about when, but at some point during the explosions, Khalid ran out the back door along with a few of his advisors and left all of his loyalists and the poor people with rifles to stay behind and die for him, like any nobleman would. And when it was over, the flag's gone, the palace and the harem were on fire. Surprisingly, the building full of 19th century electricity, the House of Wonders, wasn't on fire and was actually pretty okay. So that's something I guess.
That's cool, yeah.
However, one of the most amazing parts
probably
about
worth
all this.
Preserving.
So remember the Glasgow I mentioned, like this little dinghy that was a yacht with a cannon strapped to the front of it? Well, at 9:05 a.m., 3 minutes of these things going just full cyclic on the cannons. The Glasgow made a flanking maneuver around the back and tried to go straight for the St. George, which consisted of them screaming like a kamikaze, going straight for the battleship, firing a few rounds before the St. George immediately sank it and watched it go underwater, but because it was a shallow port, it just went a little bit underwater and the masts were still sticking up. So the crew of the St. George felt bad for them, got in their boats, drove over and pulled all of them in and rescued them, and they weren't even taken as like prisoners of war or anything. They were just sitting on the St. George looking at him, and they're like, we should probably do something. Also, to be even cuter about it, as the Glasgow was going underwater, they hoisted the British flag as a way to say, like, no, okay, we changed teams. There was also a small ground unit that the British had sent onto shore that arrived at the palace at 9:45, and no one shot back at them, no one attacked them, because, again, everyone was either running, on fire, or dead. So they kind of got there to the palace, and they were like, oh, I guess we won. That's neat. So technically, the longest that this war could possibly be is 45 minutes, because if you consider the call to fire at 9 a.m. to be the opening and the ending whenever the soldiers got to the capital and were like, all right, it's ours now, that's 9 to 9:45, so 45 minutes. Whereas if you say that the actual shots fired and the flag going down, which was 9:02 to 9:40, 38 minutes, is the actual war, then that you've got like 7 minutes of difference. I like the 38-minute one because it's funnier by at least 7 minutes. All in all, during the 38 minutes, the British government had fired 500 shells, 4,100 machine gun rounds, and 1,000 rifle rounds. Zanzibar suffered roughly 500 casualties, and it's believed the majority of them came from the two biggest buildings being on fire. Whereas Britain suffered one casualty, which was a petty officer on the Thrush who, during the fire, injured himself somehow, but he got better, so... and that's it. That's all they lost in this war. Also, remember how I said the surrounding city had been evacuated? Well, there were several looters who were, using the evacuation time as a chance to steal stuff, and 20 of them got killed in the bombardment as well. So technically 520 Zanzibars, or Zanzibari. The country doesn't exist anymore. I don't know what they're called. The people of Zanzibar. That sounds good. So as soon as the British government got to shore, their immediate goal was to put out the fires here, which took a couple hours, meaning that the fires lasted longer than the war itself. Pretty much the aftermath of this was Khalid got away to the Germanic East Africa, and Germany and Britain, weren't the best of friends during this time. Yeah. So Germany said that they would give Khalid asylum from Britain. And then in 1916, during World War I, whenever Britain was on its campaign through Africa, they actually found Khalid by some chance, to which they brought him back, tried him, and punished him to exile on St. Helena, which, fun fact, is the same island that Napoleon was exiled to. So, the more you know. Not only that, but after everything was said and done, the British government taxed the people of Zanzibar for the cost of the ammunition they used to shoot at them, which has got to be the most British thing I have ever heard. All in all, of course, the lives that were lost is a tragedy, but I think it's interesting to look at history through a certain optics that's entertaining in order to try to better understand it. Because there have been several wars throughout history of what happens whenever an industrial nation meets a nation that is struggling to maintain any form of industry. However, the, offset side war normally isn't as extreme as 38 minutes. So hopefully you enjoyed this little walk through memory lane, and hopefully it wasn't entirely boring. And sincerely and from the bottom of my heart, thank you for watching. I enjoy this kind of like weird nerdy stuff. And I'm glad that hopefully you all enjoyed as well, or at least if you've stuck to this long in the video, I hope that you enjoyed it. It's really cool for you guys to, be a part of this and to watch this, and it's great. I want to say a huge thank you to the person who is editing this for me, Honey. Honey, you are fantastic. She's made all the funny meme videos of me, so I thought it would be cool to, give her a shot with this one, because again, Caitlin is still doing a ton of the editing for me, and she will in the future. But she's busy, I'm busy too, so it kind of works to break up the workload as much as possible. So Honey, I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you so much for doing this. It's really cool of you. Thank you all so much for watching. It means the most. You guys have been great. This has been enjoyable for me, like this channel, and I enjoy doing this kind of stuff. It's fun to just like take old historical stuff and point to them. So thank you all so much for watching. Thank you so much to my subscribers. It really does mean the most. I'm at a number I can't comprehend now, 240, I think 240,000, which is
wow,
over the moon, and I'm really thankful for it.
Yeah,
you guys
now
are
it's
giving me opportunities I couldn't imagine for, like the ad earlier
58
in the video,
million.
And just things
He grew
such
fast,
as,
didn't he?
And that's really cool. Just thank you guys for that. You've given me opportunities I couldn't imagine, and it means the most. So thank you to my patrons too, because, well, above all, because like the fact that you guys support me in the way that you do is just mind-blowing, and it really gets to me every day, like, wow, people really watch this, and they donate to it, and it means the most. So thank you all for that. And thank you to my top tier patrons. As you can see here, it's really cool. I hear my dog barking downstairs and I'm scared now.
Great names.
Thank you to all my top tier
list.
patrons. Thank you all so much for being the best. It really does mean the world. So thank you all for watching, and hopefully I will see you in the next video. If you're interested, part 8 of the conspiracy theory iceberg will be coming out soon.
Oh, wow.
But if you're not interested in any of that, just thank you for watching.
It's still going on.
Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.
All right. Well, there you go. That was cool. I really do enjoy his content. I think he's a good storyteller, and he's respectful, but he also sees the entertainment and everything, and he's just a good presenter. And this was an interesting story. I really didn't know anything about it, and now I do. I mean, it's about what you would expect from the shortest war ever. Just completely lopsided. The British Empire versus a much smaller nation, and it goes about as you would expect. And yeah, definitely interesting stuff. And I do enjoy Wendigoon and his presentation, and yeah, I don't think I have too much else to say about it, but I was definitely entertained, and I mean, I learned a lot as well, so can't beat that. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the reaction. Let me know if you did, and see you in the next one.